Hey, hi, everybody. I think I'm pretty close to the right time, and I'd like to welcome you to apparently it's the 10th program in our Series 4, where I've been on mute. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody. It's the 10th program in our Series 4. And just to say hello, which I'll do now. Let's see if I can make this work for me. Yeah. All right, that's good. Well, so Michael is here to keep everything in good order, and thank you. And Joe, also in our communications team, she is with us, and it all helps. So welcome to Tuya and Anna and Annette and Catherine, Heike and Johi and Karen and Kim, Loretta and Lori, Martine and Risto. I think that's who we have so far. And, you know, others may join us, and if you're ever one of the ones that comes in after I'm able to say hi to everybody, then you'll know that I'm inwardly saying hi to you too. I guess this is a beautiful picture of Sirius, Michael tells us. Close up, you know, one of our local cosmic Christs with a second ray, ultimate second ray monad, and a secondary sixth ray monadic subray, and a fifth ray soul. And then we probably get down to other second ray factors in its more outer makeup. So this is the inspirer of our entire program of initiation. And when we follow this particular Syrian path of initiation, which is, you know, not necessarily the same thing as taking the fourth path once we are an initiate of the 6th degree, but when we follow it, it leads to ever greater appreciation of this oneness in which we talk about living, but we have to, of course, experience it if we can. That would be the goal. So I'm going to change my screen here and look at something quite different. This has to do with our questions. Now, I want to say that maybe, you know, we're going to use a lot of words as we try to describe something, excuse me, that cannot be captured by words. And what's important is that something which cannot be captured. So, you know, so much of what we do should be along the meditative line, and that's what we'll try to do now. We need to practice this, what can I call it? An increasingly non-bounded identity. We need to practice an increasingly non-bounded identity. I mean, we are, in a way, so immersed in the personality, we, the consciousness in incarnation, the soul in incarnation, are rather habitually trapped in basically what amounts to a personal identity. And we have to free ourselves from that personal identity by whatever means. That doesn't mean we don't use the personality. We do, but our identification is different. And that's why the old Raja Yoga method, which DK actually does describe at a certain point, I have a body, but I'm not that body. I have an electrical field, but I'm not that, not that, not that, not that, not this, not that. It helps us be free, because the thing that inhibits our freedom is the sense of wrong identification. We start, there's so much identification with the body itself. Our whole society is extremely body conscious, and maybe it's the rare person that is not given over to that kind of misapprehension. And then, of course, we have our identification with our feelings, and the sensitive, more artistic types have that. And many people, maybe even someone like Descartes, says, I think, therefore I am. It is the thinking process which has completely captured him. And without it, he thinks he would not be. I remember going through a period like that in my teens, where I wondered, if I can't think, do I exist? I couldn't separate my identity from the thought process. But with the study of occultism, it's become easier. Never entirely easy. So, non-bounded identity, what is it? Let's just, sometimes, and maybe tonight here is one of those times, it's going to be a mixture of discussion or sort of lecture and meditation. There's just reflection. We'll just stop and we'll pause on certain things. What to you, how would you define to yourself, how would you feel, participate in, experience, non-bounded identity? Now, of course, even if we identify as the entire universe, which esoterically should be possible, even though our knowledge would not suffice, even then we'd be dealing with a boundary which we're not capable of lifting. But on the way there, there are many bounded states of identity. which we can lift and or unbound, if we want to use it as a verb. Non-bounded identity. What is it really? Let's just, we're going to pause for a little while here and we'll reflect upon what that might mean. Now, it certainly is part of a process of leaving the familiar behind. Now, some of us maybe are adventurous in leaving the familiar behind in these high categories of spiritual encounter, and maybe we're not quite so adventurous when it comes to the more prosaic leaving the body behind. That would be called death, really. Either that or some out of the body experience. Sometimes it's forced upon us. We wake up somewhere else. And the body is not part of that experience. We are free of the body. We may even look at the body and we just know it's not what we are. We are alive and well in a non-corporeal state. And of course, what's important is to experience this non-corporeal state even while we are undergoing an incarnational period, which is in the body. Maybe our dreams come closest, but there would be another and higher stage of clear dreaming, lucid dreaming, where we would just know that we are not the body. But then what would we be? Every time we come to some kind of finitude, okay, now I'm in my astral body, let's say, we might say, well, this is what I really am, but it is bounded, and certainly our concrete mind is bounded. And then we get into the interesting consideration that if we were able to be within our causal body, which DK recommends as necessary for real meditation, as so many failures exist, he says, because people cannot get into that. It would be ever so much freer than being bounded in the corporeal physical vehicle, but still it's a bounded experience. See, if we're going to talk about the boundless immutable principle, the very first fundamental of the secret doctrine, we have to understand what boundedness really is. And thus it is on the cosmic physical plane and beyond that we reach very expansive states, and they somehow are still bounded. They still have their ring past knot. They are, in a way, a finite form of energy. And all the way until whatever vehicle we have is just a self-perception, really, meaning that the universal logos perceives itself in ever reduced parts. And to identify with any of those parts due to universal logoic reduced self-perception is to enter a bounded state. So, we're not going to experience right now a boundless state, but what we are going to do is try to loosen our boundaries. Now, I would recommend that we reflect for a few moments on this idea that is presented in the Light of the Soul, the Yoga Sutras, that the whole thing is taking place within me. You are taking place within me. I am taking place within you. And the you and the me there are the same. It is the relatively unbounded me, or I. The reason I call it relatively unbounded is that it's still taking place within the universe, which is a bounded, finite, perceptual structure. So, we're not talking right now about being able to perceive the boundless immutable principle. It's a non-perceivable anyway. We're talking about being freer and freer from our usual perceptions of boundedness. So let's ponder for a moment that you take place within me, I take place within you. Everything takes place within me. Everything takes place within you. We ponder for a little moment here. Now, it's a strange thought, isn't it, that when we usually say, well, we have a place within the universe, within the galaxy, within the whatever, within the solar system, we have a place. We're a tiny little unit, a tiny little emanation, and we have a place in all this stuff, all this big relational picture. When we usually think that way, and then have to reverse it, that it's all taking place within me. that I'm taking place within you, and you're taking place within me, and everything is taking place within both of us, but both of us are actually the same thing in which everything is taking place. It requires a different kind of perception. I call it, infuception. So, it's here the study of non-relational reality. When we're used to studying or, encountering relational reality, and the more exacting the relations, the more we say that we know and understand our place in everything. But this is different. So, what happens if there's a me here? It sounds better to maybe say me. You have to be careful how you use the word I, even though it is correct. If you say there is, well, there is an I, really. And everywhere you look, in time or space, that I, relatively unbounded, compared with the little encapsulation we think we are, everywhere you look, that I-ness, I sometimes draw it like a figure 8. That I is there. Now, therefore, the idea here is you're not bounded by locality within the universe. You could go anywhere that an astronomer can conceive, and you are there just by thinking about it. And you've always been there in a far less bounded state than this vehicle, this personality vehicle. And the same operates as far as time goes. We usually say, okay, well, in this form, which I seem to be, I have, the 70, 80, 90, 100 years, and I'm here during that time and not here otherwise, after that period is over. But then, in fact, the non-boundedness in time means that whatever time it was, however many cycles ago and universes ago, you were there and will be there in cycles and universes to come. The real you was there, will be there. Think about that for a minute. Now, obviously, this form, this present perception, this limitation, which is perceived at a higher level of emanation, was not there and will not be there. That form is very transient, a certain number of Earth years. But you, I, we, us, the real one, were there, are here, will be there, no matter what the time. And not only that, but if we can stretch our minds here, we are the very substance of what occurred there and will occur there and is occurring here. We are the substance because of which all this is happening. So without that which we are, none of this would be happening. But then, of course, it requires that we go into increasingly non-bounded identity. We have to get a feeling for what that is. We have to be a conscious breaker of rings pass not. If we run into a ring pass not other than the ultimate boundary of our universe, we have to transcend, permeate, go beyond, go through that ring pass not. Our identity must not be captured by a limited ring pass not. And I'm going to put that down. Our identity must not be captured by any limited ring pass not. Or maybe I should say limiting ring pass not, which obviously it is right now. You know, I am I, you're you, this is this, that is that. That's the language of the finite talking. And because of our concrete mind, we do speak all the time in the language of finitude. While using finitude, we have to overcome it. So how do we slip beyond and through? The Christ gave us an example, you know, it's just said very simply, he knew what was in man. Well, most of us can't get beyond the ring past knot, which blocks the other from what we seem to be. We just can't make it through that barrier. And the Christ could do that. And, you know, a empathic master filled with whatever energy it is that animates Neptune, that kind of energy can just pass by the apparent ring past knot and know what was in man or any other thing. And finally, in doing that, a high state of contemplation will be entered, and we will arrive at pure being, which we will discover to be the I that we are looking for. So what is formally not I, not self, is super formally or beyond formally, I, being, and self. We have to find that I that gives us the naught is but me formula. Now, maybe, you know, in your field of consciousness, there will be certain people whose imagined presence or real presence seems to trigger that permeation of the ring past knot up to the point where being is realized. It's a state of realization. Or as my old teacher used to quip, seeing with real eyes, which probably in this case, these real eyes are the eyes of the heart. Sometimes it comes upon you, but it would be better that it be the result of deliberate intention at any time, so that we could transcend the ring past knot at any time. And then it would be a very subtle change. It's not that the form that you are perceiving would go away. It's just that something internal would well up and become the substantiality of that form. In other words, yes, you are what you are, but then suddenly a factor of substantiality appears out of nowhere and becomes more real, more substantial, more essential than the form you were observing. Let's think about that for a moment. See, the oneness is a very predatory, jealous, all-consuming state. It just doesn't allow anything to escape it. That's why I sometimes say, you cannot escape me. But what do I mean? I'm not like, Hunger Games or hunting someone in the jungle. The me that I am, the you that you are not, cannot escape. And the you that you are becomes the me from which escape is impossible. So you want to get to the point when nothing can escape the I-ness that you are. You want to get to the point where nothing, no perception, no person, no thing, no whatever can escape the I-ness that you are. And I recommend that it's a very subtle state, and that you have to practice negating the formal identity of other perceptions and finding the substantiality of those other perceptions, the ultimate essential substantiality of the other perceptions, including people. And DK is funny there. He says people and associated phantasmagoria. He basically says that people are phantoms. They're part of the phantasmagoria. They are formal. And in the way they appear to us, they are actual but not real. So you have to practice that, And every time you run into a ring past knot, oh, here's a thing, here's another thing, you don't let it rest in its formality. Yes, you acknowledge, okay, the perceptual mechanism is such that this form appears, but deep down you know you're not going to accept it. That a thing as it appears is as it is. It isn't. A thing that appears is formally actual, but essentially unreal, and you don't accept the formality of anything, the formness, the formal nature of. You don't accept it until you have found a way to reduce it to same being, same being your unbounded identity. So we all have to come to one of those harrowing decisions. You know how it is with decision making on the path. They get tougher and tougher, the decisions. And you have to ask yourself, which is more real? That which I appear to see or register, in its formal nature, or the substantiality, the essentiality of what you encounter. So it's another way of saying, what's more real, bounded me or unbounded me? Now, philosophically, I think we will accept that unbounded me is more real. But you say, well, then what are you going to do with it? Because, it's forever the same, and it's not part of the game of Mahamaya, and it's not part of the universal drama, dance, creativity, whatever. It's not part of the doing of things. There's nothing to do, and there's no one to do it. So, we really need both. In the midst of all of this play, this interaction, this conflict, this harmony, this drama, in the midst of it all, which must be tended to, we need to also be infusing that which is the essence of it all, and about which nothing can be done. You can't do a thing about being. I think I'll put that down. One cannot do a thing about being. Well, and that would be like that. There's no actor that can act upon being, because there's nothing else but being itself. So there's no second, there's no third, no fourth. Causality does not exist in the matter. Well, I'll call it the matter. No, it's not right. In the causality does not exist in relation to subject of being. There's no cause for being. Now that takes us into a problem, because I find, even very intelligent people talking about numbering the universes. Well, you can't number what is beginningless, a member of a beginningless series. You can't number it. You can arbitrarily call something number one or a starting point, but there's no true number of any universe. You can't say that it's the billionth in a series, or the trillionth, or quadrillionth, or, and on and on. You can't do that, because every universe is always infinitely preceded by a sequence of universes that has no beginning to the sequence. So there is no causality in this realm. Some people say, okay, it's the cause of itself, but that's more an arresting thought than probably a factual thought. The factual thought is that it, the great it, than which there is no other, has existed forever, and there's never been another number associated with it. It's the realm of no number. It's the no thing, and it's uncaused. And then, comes that transition where you have to say, oh yeah. And it just so happens that essential I is that big zero, that big uncaused zero. But how do you know that? How do you feel that? How do you register that? Words are words, but the experience is a different thing. So you have to decide. Up to a certain point, it is right, know thyself. We have to continue. What's in my physical etheric body? How does it work? How do my emotions work? How does my lower mind work? How does my causal body work? How do my triadal vehicles work? How does my monadic vehicle work? Yes, you got to know that. And through the process of initiation, we will come to know that. And on it will go regarding any form in which the consciousness is embodied or any form with which the consciousness is identified. That'll happen. Do you care about, is that for you the real? Or is the real self something that relations cannot touch? Is the real self non-relational? Out of all relation with anything else, because it is everything else. And it has no second, no third, no fourth. It stands alone, unbounded and alone. So what we have to begin to do is to extend our selfhood. And we may feel a sense of loss as we do this. I think I once lost a friend for no other reason than that I said, there is no real progress. There is only illusory progress within a finitude called universe. And what I was just saying is that we're all of us really the unbounded immutable principle, boundless immutable principle, which is so absolute that nothing can be added or taken from it. Where are you going to put it? Where, if you take something, if you add something, where does it go? It is the ultimate everythingness by being the no thing. Well, that was just too much for this person. And they just rebelled against the thought that whatever we seem to be actually in Mahamaya, which is universal appearance, it's just an infinitesimal when compared to our ultimate essentiality. And so which do you prefer? Or have you worked out a way that both perspectives are simultaneously possible? I would recommend that above all. Because with Shankara, we know that Maya is most mysterious and forever. And with him as well, we know there's only one beingness. That's it. Forever. Without cause, without beginning, without end, without movement, without variation. except for the great mystery of how it becomes everything implicate within itself. The pointlessness of the ultimate essentiality. Now, does one want to appreciate oneself as essentially that? Or do we want to only consider the science of relations? And I suggest that both are needed, but I suggest that that simplification that comes from looking at non-relational reality is paradoxically a long time in coming. And we may not all be ready for it. And even when we think we are ready for it, we may not really be ready for it. And yet we've done it forever, literally forever, forever. So then, maybe with these thoughts in mind, we can come a little closer to saying that all that I perceive takes place within me, within the unbounded, all-pervading me. Think of it. Let's say, think of the unbounded, all-pervading, I'll call it the me. You know, subject and object here get difficult, but all takes place within the unbounded, all-pervading me. Let's ponder on that. You see, you know, if you say, oh, I'm so glad I didn't live in those times. They were so ignorant and full of disease. Oh, I'm so glad that I didn't live in that place or won't live in that place, because that's happening to others, but thank goodness it's not happening to me. There's no way we can say, thank goodness it's not happening to me. Thank goodness I'm not involved. You are. It is happening to you. And you are not only involved, you are the one to whom it is happening. Of course, it would be overwhelming to think always in those terms. And conveniently, we can extract ourselves from miserable situations by being or pretending that we are the limited self. But it's happening to you right now, everywhere. This unbounded, pervasive, trans ring past not you. And that, you know, the Christ and those great beings that are mastering the art of identification, they really are in those to whom it is happening. maybe not perfectly, because, that's like for God itself or beyond. But it is one of the things that happens along the way with increasing identification and with the heart center open more and more, and the whole chain of heart centers, including the monad as a heart center, being open. You may remember as you looked at the charts that the heart center is located on the second etheric subplane. Well, so is the monad. The monad has a cosmic etheric location on the second systemic plane, or which is the second cosmic subplane. So this whole chain of hearts, higher and higher, at higher and higher frequencies, is involved. So when you think of yourself, how will you think of yourself? It says, take the eyes off the little self, take the eyes off the little personal self. Okay, but it doesn't say be ignorant of what selfhood is. It doesn't say that. We have to really feel. Can I just use that simple word? Feel what selfhood is. And it does go beyond any ring pass knot that we apply to ourselves. So to begin with, when you look at somebody else, don't think I am I, you are you, but take your real being beyond your artificial ring pass knot and beyond theirs, and pervade with and as being every object, including that phantom person that you're looking at. You're part of the phantasmagoria. DK is trying to say to us that persons are not real. They may be actual, but in the form of personhood, they are not real. So practice that, you see. And then something will make a subtle and often sudden turn. And it will be very difficult to describe. But you will know that you are identical in being with the object you are perceiving. I'll put that down. When the change comes, you will know that you are identical in being with the object, person, for instance, you are perceiving, and then you will find yourself infusing. That is perceiving in a totally infused state. Okay. So that's sort of the end of um, IAB 4 number, whoop, the English pound mark. Don't want that. Number 10. Sorry. When you've got these two keyboards in front of you here, probably is the symbol of not escaping duality, you know. Number 10, and let's just say beginning of IAB 4, number 11. Okay, friends, so is there anything that you would like to comment on or ask, or that struck you about this non-bounded identity, and you're taking place within me and I taking place within you, and how to make the choice between the actual and the real, the myopic actual and the essentially substantial real, which is non-relational. Anything that hit you, anything that may be of interest to you in this. So, Michael, I'll request from you, any heads up.
Yes, I would just like to remind people that they can write their questions or comments in the chat box, or they can click on the participants icon at the bottom of the screen and raise their hand. And Lori has raised her hand. Lori, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Got you, Lori.
Okay. I appreciate this journey, Michael. And, you said unbounded identity. So, of course, to me, it's unlimited potentiality. And yet the finite can never know the infinite. And yet we are the infinite, so always a paradox, right? But I absolutely love the way it stimulates both the use of the abstract mind and especially for myself, the heart, and I think it's rare in studies that we can acquire that. So to say, I really appreciate your work here.
Thank you, Lori. This the thing here is, when we say something, as I say, as you say, as others say, that we really are the absolute infinitude, or we can just abbreviate it by calling it the infinite. I think it's a true statement. I think it sounds, to some, are you kidding me? Sounds a little pretentious, but it is, I think, it does hold up philosophically. And when we say that the finite can never take in or appreciate the infinite, that too is true. And so we have to return the finite into the infinite. And this we do in the ultimate pralaya of any universe. We kind of, I'm going to get into this. It's you know, I'm racking my head over it, you know, but we can reduce the entire universe imaginatively to a dimensionless point. In other words, it is, but it has no dimension. So right there, you're presented with a paradox. We ask ourselves, how can something be and have no dimension? But we have to find a way that that is true. And when that universe reduced to the ultimate infinitesimal, the thing than which nothing can be smaller or more negligible, I like to call it the ultimate negligibility, there will come a time in space when that will be absorbed, and its exclusive being, that point, its exclusive being will be reabsorbed into the absolutely infinite, and the absolutely infinite also, and this is the mind bender, will be reduced to the ultimate super universal infinitesimal. And the point will dissolve into the pointlessness, which is the reality. In other words, there are no points in absoluteness, because a point represents something distinct, and there are no distinctions in ultimate reality. So we are using the abstract mind. We're trying to use the abstract mind. There are several ways of getting to the abstract mind. It all begins with, we try to envision the relationship between the higher self and the personality. And then DK has given us the Antakarana technique, where we retain a pool of energies on the fourth subplane of the mental plane, and we use it as a springboard into the abstract mind, however that really works. And there's another way to go. It's almost like sitting at the center of the egoic lotus within the jewel, and of course I'm kind of speaking symbolically, we use a higher form of reason to take us to the abstract mind. And basically, you know, in this thing that Tuya made, you know, coloring what the Tibetan had made, the triangle is right there, the three methods. Okay? And what we've been doing, I think, is working from the center of the egoic lotus into the abstract mind. But remember that the abstract mind is connected with the buddhi. It doesn't show where intuition begins, but it's on the fourth subplane of the Buddhic plane. And that the buddhi is connected with this nirvanic mind of the Buddha. And all of that is connected with monadic awareness. So what we're really doing is like a little primer on some of the features of monadic awareness, where we can say that the perception of oneness really does prevail. Now, it's way beyond us in a certain sense, but there'll come a time when the monadic vehicle breaks, because every temple eventually has to break, and we will find ourselves as a free spirit in the seventh heaven. And not to say that that is the ultimate, it isn't, but let's just say we'll find ourselves in one of these three triangles. And then the three triangles will break, as far as we're concerned, or we'll break through. And we'll find ourselves on the cosmic astral plane as liberated monads, destined for the cosmic astral, cosmic mental, or in one case at least, the cosmic Buddhic plane. So the journey of the monad is a fantastic thing, amazing thing. And in this kind of speculative work we're doing here, we're kind of preparing to be free of identification with lesser vehicles. And that does stimulate the abstract mind to think about it, but we've got to go even further and experience it on still higher planes. The experience, finally, is what counts. It helps when we can describe something with the abstract mind. Some of the great thoughts in the world, are found there. But it's even more valuable to be in the middle of the experience of that which we are describing with the abstract mind. So in short, we're on our way, and we're making a preparation for the day when we will make the great decision and decide which one of the 9 paths we will take. This is all preparation for that day. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
And next, Joe's hand is raised. And Joe, you can unmute yourself. Joe Garceau, you can unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, we have more than one.
I'm unmuted. Okay. Okay. I have Neptune at 9 degrees and 37 minutes and my ascendant at 9 degrees and 53 minutes of Virgo.
Okay.
When I was 45-ish and I had begun to meditate, I finally decided that maybe I had some sense of who I was separate from everyone else in my world.
Yeah.
Based on that experience, I would say that coming into an incarnation, we are incredibly challenged to leave the personality in order to simply go into beingness.
Yes, at a certain point, yes. And of course, Neptune people, it's like an hourglass, isn't it, Joe? Down here is the participation mystique, the participation mystique. And then there's a short span when the attention is on the individualized point that has abstracted itself from the mass consciousness. But then that's never entirely satisfying. We have to go into the group consciousness, and then it widens out again. And Neptune really becomes useful. So in a way, it's a liability at first because you don't know who you are. I mean, I'm talking about many, many people with strong Neptune, and they're just kind of lost. Then comes those Leo moments when the point emerges from the mass of many confusing experiences and many, many points. But the point really emerges, and for a while, it's a very individual state. But then, third initiation is taken, transfiguration, glorification, the touch of the monad occurs, and the whole hourglass begins to widen out again, and it just keeps going and going until it includes everything, especially if the person has a strong second ray for whom the theme of inclusion is a major liberating method. So, Neptune on the ascendant, okay, in a disciple, it can be a very Buddhic placement. In a non-aspiring person who doesn't know or care about these things, it can be quite confusing, like really, over-identifying with everything and everybody, so you never extract your individuality. But, we're talking now here among ourselves, and we are aspirants and disciples, so I'm assuming that the Neptune will be used for Buddhic, intuitive, identificatory purposes. So it can be a very good placement, and it's one of the rulers veiled by the moon in Virgo. Vulcan and Neptune, those two. And later in Aquarius, we add Uranus to the story. So it's a very specific kind of thing for the development of compassion and identification and really feeling the other, as it were. Well, maybe next life it'll be something different, huh, Joe?
I've come along. I work with Uranus all my life. What I was thinking as you were speaking earlier was that for all of us, there's probably the possibility of identification with will or the imagination or the Buddhic factor. For me, it's definitely the Buddhic factor, because that gives me a kind of vehicle that takes me further into a greater and greater identification. For me, it's love, love, love. But I think for everybody, it could, beingness could be will, will, will. Eventually, I guess it might be for all of us.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those people that think that the three factors of identity, what can I call it? The three principal rays, the three divine aspects come out of being. And so we probably do have a tendency to immerse ourselves in one or other of those three once we reach a certain point of development, and then later we put it all together. In the egoic lotus, for instance, the synthesis petals burst open all together at a certain point, even though there may be an emphasis on one or the other earlier on. So the beingness is yet is the substantial factor that sponsors the will emphasis, the love emphasis, the intelligence emphasis. and I often confuse it myself. I say, okay, is Ray 1 the same as being? And, you know, when I finally think it through, I say, no, it isn't. It arises from being, just the way Ray 2 and Ray 3. Will arises from being, love arises from being, intelligence arises from being. But being is its own unique thing. And
That's
is,
very helpful.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's central
Yes.
to all these other qualities, you know. And in your case, and in this incarnation, that whole Buddhic emphasis, because look, Virgo, if that's your ascendant there, more second ray is coming through Virgo at this time than through any other constellation. And then Neptune's got the second ray monad and the sixth subray to that monad probably, and it's also got a sixth ray soul. So the whole 2-6 line, very prominent, and to be cultivated, absolutely to be cultivated in this incarnation. So it's a question, you know, you're an astrologer, and it's a question of knowing what you have to do at this moment of time, which is a short moment, you know, if we look at an incarnation, but it builds in the causal body the next value, you know, the next radiatory, sounding, singing, coloristic quality. We always need something, and you know, you've read maybe in Letters on Occult Meditation, the soul sounds its note before incarnation and says what's missing, what's out of tune, and builds a personality accordingly to supply the deficiency or correct the dissonance. So, you know, when we're given a specific assignment in our horoscope, we know it's there for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
And Heike has written a long question in the chat box, writing, 25 or more years ago, something happened unintentionally. I stood with my back to a tree, and suddenly my consciousness dissolved on the level of body or substance. I dissolved into atoms, and those dissolved as well. And I think I kind of lost self-consciousness entirely, although I was still like a cloud of dissolved matter, which was no matter anymore and no form. My teacher, master, friend from the other side, suddenly was there and put me together again, like he brought the atoms together back into form, and said, "Not yet." Until today, I really have no clue what that was. There was no self, no I, no feeling. And afterwards, I needed many minutes to remember who I am and where I was at that moment. And time like 20 minutes had gone by in which the people I was in the woods with didn't know where I was. For me, it was only a moment, but identification, irritation, stayed still for a while. Do you have an idea about this?
Okay, you know, first of all, I don't really know. And the second thing would be what I think this was all about. It sounds like the consciousness was lifted into a deep state of contemplation that we tend to call samadhi. And you know how the Hindus are, they differentiate everything, all these different kinds of samadhi, but basically it's a a unitive oneness synthesis event. And, you know, it sounds like you are abstracted out of the normal identifications into a very much higher perspective. Was it a touch of the monad, the spirit? It almost sounds like that. The first ray has a name, the power that touches and then withdraws. And we're told that every touch of the monad has to be exquisitely measured, lest there be damage done to the form. But it sounds like a very high touch, which penetrated the usual limitations of perception in which even the disciple normally lives. And so it took things apart because it offered a higher perspective on everything, and then establishes itself as a contemplative goal for the future. So I would say that as one enters the stage, not of concentration, not of meditation per se, but the stage of contemplation, illumination, inspiration, that it is taking steps towards the replication of the kind of thing that happened to you there, where you have a much broader, wider, deeper point of view about who you are and are not than we normally carry with us, than we normally express. It's an incentivizing vision of reality. We all need those incentives. If I achieved it once, I can achieve it again. If I achieved it for a short time, I can achieve it with continuity, and I can identify in life in a different way than the habitual, limited way. So those experiences, they mark out possibilities and they give us the incentive to move towards the possibilities. It sounds like, you know, a triadal, minimally intuitive, but even monadic touch. It sounds like that to me.
Michael, do you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, dear. Yes, yes.
Yes. Can I just add, because I think that those kinds of experiences, maybe they are happening one or two in one's life, and they are very important in that sense for us to have, because they stay in our memory. So brain consciousness has been registering at least something. But maybe not at all what all was happening then when the touch has been so strong on the physical plane as well. So I think that there happens two things. One is that what the brain consciousness registering is registering, and then also this energetic impact is maybe so strong that it kicks us into that path of purification, because the purpose of life is also about that we are uplifting the lower kingdoms within us. So there has to be also that kind of thing that we are totally unaware what it did for us. And then of course, one does not know how the personal life was going and individual development. Was there anywhere a place where one was weighing what to choose? And maybe that kind of memory will help us to choose towards the light. That is a big mystery, but I think everyone has those moments. somewhere there, what happened to us, that we could not describe it in mainly and only personal level. It was beyond of this
Yeah,
reality. What
yeah.
was, and we know then that it was absolutely something what is more real than this semi-real here.
Yeah, semi-real. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's you know, when a person's climbing a mountain, they throw this piton up ahead of them, and I don't know how far. I'm not a mountain climber, but it catches on the rocks, and they make sure it is firm, and then they pull themselves up to that level because they have thrown something out ahead of them, which anchors above and allows them to pull up their weight to the place where that piton anchored. I think experiences like this give you a tremendous incentive to work towards them, so we can find out what happened. Can this happen as an act of will? Can there be a science to this? Or do I just have to wait for something to come along and happen? As occultists or in training, we're trying to make a science out of advancing our consciousness and our initiatory power. And if we can do that, we are succeeding and are not just driven by forces. We can actually control, to a certain extent, those forces which elevate us and others. So with you, I agree that these few experiences beyond the normal are really, really important to notice, to remember, and to work with, to apply, I would say. Yeah. And I'm
Okay.
sure, you know, we could say, yeah, look, and every one of us has one or two somewhere there that we could put in that category. Yeah. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Okay, there are no other hands raised and no other questions or comments posted in the chat box at this moment.
Okay. Let's just have a tiny little exercise here where we say envision someone, let's say, close to us, someone that we care about. But let's not get caught in thinking about their qualities. You know, they're good at this and this and this, and I love them because this and this and this. Let's not do that. But instead, let our unbounded identity, as it were, go forth from us and meet their unbounded identity, which turns out to be really the same identity. And let's realize that in the meeting of those two unbounded identities, which are really the same, we're somehow meeting the greater I, which we are. Each one of the two people is meeting the greater I, which the person essentially is. And, you know, maybe if we practice, we will find that identical substratum, and we will begin to infuseive, and we will find being, which is the I, which is the greater me. So in a way, it sounds strange, but don't let anybody remain themselves alone. Make sure they are you, and they will make sure that you are they. And so it's an exercise, you know, beyond good and evil, you know, beyond what is attractive or what is repulsive. Those take place in the realm of differentiation and the realm of quality. But what we're looking for is trans-qualitative, trans-qualitative, trans-qualitative. So it's not only blotting out all form, as in Rule 9, it's temporarily blotting out all quality and finding the isness that is I-ness. Whoa. Okay, stop. I have to get rid of this. That was Pac-Man eating up everything I've written. I'll do the best to restore it. But let's just say, oh, okay, that's no good. I'm just going to leave it like this for the moment and hope that the whole document does not disappear. Finding the isness that is I-ness. Okay, friends, so let's what we'll do now is we'll use the great invocation. Okay. Yeah, we will use the great invocation. And then I'll go back and see if I can restore those documents.
Michael, what you have written in the document is recorded, so it
Yeah,
is
I know.
available.
Yeah, recorded in that way. Yeah, I know that. Thank you, Michael. But you see the Pac-Man effect. Okay. The great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. And from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. 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 Okay, friends, thank you. And I'm going to write that little formula down. The isness that is I-ness. If I can get myself back to the point where that's possible. So tomorrow morning, I think it's Friday, it's glamour, dissipation of 5 a.m. And at 5 p.m., we'll have the cosmic fire in depth. Meanwhile, all of us in the communications area wish you love and many blessings. And thank you for attending this session. Lots of good comments from you, and good thoughts and questions. So thank you. And this will be available on Makara pretty soon, and then after that, available on YouTube. So we'll see you then. And we'll keep going. Okay. Bye-bye.